This is the drone shot of the first exercise, the slow cone weave. The cones are about 14 feet apart, and it takes the riders into a 27-foot U-turn. And I give them a little bit extra room, so I move the cones out in 3 parking spaces, 27 feet. So if they go all the way to the cones, it's probably about 30 feet. First thing I do is I walk them through the exercise and explain it completely to them so that there's no doubt in their mind what they have to do. And I'm telling them that when they get through the last weave, if they've done it properly, they'd be coming between those cones right there, and they should approach the next green cone with the motorcycle leaning to the right. That means they'll have a little bit of momentum. So the bike is leaning to the right. As soon as they get to that green tip cone, they snap their head and eyes and look between those 2 other cones with the green tips. The bike should lean the entire time. And it's fairly simple as long as you look where you want that bike to go. If you look at the opposite side of the cones all the way to the right, yeah, you're probably going to hit those. Then we'll have Donna demonstrate it. Now watch Donna, how much she dips from side to side and how much she leans the bike. Her speed, about 10 miles per hour or so. Her front tire almost goes from white line to white line. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. She gets really close to that green tip cone, turns her head and eyes, and easily makes the turn. Now here's our first victim. Donna's standing down there at the end showing him which way he should go around the first cone. And as usual, very little dipping, trying to keep the bike as straight up as possible. Misses the next weave. Trying to look at the cones directly in front of him instead of way ahead of him. Then he misses the pivot point or the green tip cone by 4 feet. And then he looks at the opposite side he should never look at. And of course, that's where he goes. Now this rider has been here before, and this is more or less a practice session for him. But if you're watching, you see your dips could be a little bit bigger. This rider is dipping fairly well for the first time through. Let's see if he makes a mistake of missing that pivot point. Yes, he did, by about 4 feet. Again, he looks at the right side where he doesn't want to go, and that's where he goes. Very typical mistakes. Happens every class. This exercise is called the offset cone weave. It's a series of left turns and right turns. Between the 2 cones, we call that a gate because the rider has to pass through. Now, this is very typical of someone first trying this. Going extremely slow. The brain tells you all the wrong things. His brain is saying, go really, really slow. But if you get under 5 miles an hour, it's almost impossible to lean the bike. And since the bike turns by leaning, it makes it very difficult. Speed should be about 10 to 12 through here. And the rider's not turning his head quick enough. He makes it through that gate. Let's see if he makes it through this one. He'll have to turn his head quickly. And he does it, just barely. Should have plenty of room to make the next gate, but his head turn was too slow. This exercise also simulates being on a winding road. If you're on a road, for instance, the Tell the Dragon, you'll find turns even more severe than this. Now, speed through here can be as high as about 20 miles an hour on these dressers, and that would be at the lean limits. You'd hear the board scraping. But you got to get your head around. It's so important. To get a rider to do that, it takes some time. Usually within 4 hours, they're going to get it. This rider completely misses the last gate simply because he didn't turn his head fast enough. This next rider coming up is a fairly new rider. He's been riding around about a year, he told me, and he's got a Road King. Now, he's got the clutch fully extended, so he's really not in control. Combine that with the fact that he's not using any rear brake, and it makes it difficult for him. You can just steer through the exercise, but when you do so, you're not in complete control. That's why we emphasize using the friction zone and a little pressure on the rear brake. This rider's on a Kawasaki Vulcan, and he's going so slow. Watch this, he's almost stopped and trying to lean the bike. It doesn't work. He's got to stop the bike and put his foot down, and he almost tips it over. Not quite, but almost. Now, this rider's here just for practice. He's been here a couple of times. His turns are just about perfect. The idea is to feel that transition from left to right, right to left. Feel that bike transitioning quickly. You'll need that out on the street. Watch the next rider coming up. His head turns are not quick enough. And he misses the gate. If he was on the street, he would have run right off the curve. If it was a mountain, he'd be going over the cliff. That's why this exercise is so important. Now we're at the intersection. The intersection is, right now it's set up at 27 feet wide by 38 feet long. We will narrow it down to 24 feet. Now watch this Road King rider. He appears to be doing very well. He's making it through all the legs. But in actuality, he's got that clutch fully extended. He's not using the rear brake. He's simply steering through the exercise. And you can do that, but if I narrowed it down right now to 24 feet, he wouldn't make it. Here's our practiced rider. I told him to try an 18-foot turn right here. Let's see how he does. Just about, probably 19 and a half feet. This rider coming up, he's on that Kawasaki and still going too slow. Doing his best not to let the motorcycle lean. And of course he's got to put a foot down. Very common. After a few times through, most of the riders really start to get it. We see some major improvements here. The rider on the Road King is about half the time actually using the friction zone rather than letting the clutch out all the way. Sure, he hits a cone. They're not perfect. That's what we're here for. If you were perfect, you wouldn't need me. Now notice my wife Donna, she loves to direct traffic. Her arms are always waving. She's giving people the golf clap. Very animated. Now our Kawasaki rider, yeah, he's still having some problems. And apparently so is our drone pilot. Yeah, he's not exactly Tom Cruise in Top Gun. But he's getting better. The drone pilot is new at this as well. There's Donna giving him the golf clap, because he actually made it through every one of the legs without error. And that's good, a little positive motivation. This rider's got a lot of potential because he doesn't have a very high fear level. If we could just get him to use that friction zone and the rear brake all the time and turn his head a little bit quicker, he'd start to get really, really good. Unfortunately, shortly after this, we got a thunderstorm that moved in, and we had to call off the class. We could do it in the rain, but with the lightning and thunder, it gets kind of iffy. But they'll all be back. Please subscribe, give me a thumbs up,